Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we're due to start now. Welcome to the A-Level Biology Taster lesson. It's a half an hour and we're going to move quite quick and there's lots for you to do today. Hopefully you can see my PowerPoint screen that just says A-Level Biology, but I'm going to be flicking between a few screens, so let's go. We're going to be looking at the eye, the nervous system, and perception. And actually, during the A-level course, we look at the structure of the eye and we discuss things like the nervous system, and we talk about how they work together. So on my screen, you can see the structure of an eye, and then there's a couple of structures on the right-hand side. These are cells. They're known as a rod cell, that's the purple one, and a cone cell, which is the green one. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about that today, but what we're looking at today involves some of those structures, and it definitely involves the eye in places as well. Okay, so it says on here, during the A-level course, you will learn about the nervous system and how information passes from a stimulus to a receptor to the brain and finally to an effector to bring about a response. And hopefully that pathway sounds kind of familiar to you because you'll have done it before at GCSE when you've looked at the nervous system. The interplay between the eyes, the nervous system, the brain, and the environment shape your perception, which uses your senses. So you can see in the picture that one person can see this figure down here as a 6, and the other can see it as a 9. I can see that some people have got their hands up. If you put your question in the question and answer section, because you won't be able to unmute, and I'll get to those in a bit. There's quite a bit for us to go through, and because we've only got half an hour, I'll deal with questions at the end. Okay. Okay, let's have a look at this first bit here. So don't forget, we're talking about perception, and how that perception is essentially what you think of in a situation, what you understand of a situation. And we're looking at the link between what you can see, what you can taste, what you can smell, and how that all feeds into your brain and how that makes up what you understand of a particular situation that you're in. So this first one here is about the function of the eye and how that can affect perception. So it says the eye has specific receptors that detect blue, green, and red wavelengths or colours. And these receptors work together to create the full range of colours we can see. Some of these receptors can become overstimulated and temporarily ineffective, changing the perception of what we are actually looking at. So what I'm going to show you in just a moment is an illusion that is based on colour, okay, and shadows. So I'm going to change screens. Bear with me just a second. And I'm going to go to this one. So hopefully, actually not that one, I want this one. There we go. So hopefully you can see a screen, and I'm going to show you something, and this is your first task. Okay, so you don't need to move, you don't need anything. So at the moment, you should hopefully be able to see a Union Jack in the wrong colours. And what I'd like you to do is to stare at the black dot in the middle. Okay, and just keep staring at that. And I'm going to talk to you whilst you're staring at that about what's going on. So at the moment, whilst you're staring at that black dot in the middle, your cone cells, these are the cells at the back of your eye and the retina, there are certain cells in there that are being used. The ones that detect blue light or the turquoise colour, the black light and the yellow light, they're being used, and we're using them a lot to image. So at the moment, they're being overstimulated, so they're being used excessively, and that can actually cause these cone cells to become ineffective. But there are other ones that are not being used, so they will work. So whilst you're staring at that black dot, keep staring at it. What we're trying to do is to overstimulate the cone cells that are detecting the 3 colours on the screen, so the turquoise, the black, and the yellow. But we're leaving the other ones that are still working. So in a moment, I'm going to change the screen and it's going to go white, and you should notice something. So here we go, keep staring at the black dots, and there we go. So hopefully what you can see is a very faint outline of a Union Jack, but it's in the traditional colours of the red, the blue, and the white. Okay. It will disappear, so don't worry, it's not going to stay with you forever. Okay, it will disappear, and actually as you blink it should get lighter and lighter, and it will fade over a couple of minutes. Okay, now the reason why that happened is to do with, like I say, those special cells at the back of your eye. They're called the cone cells, and what we've just done is we've used up the the chemical or the pigment that was detecting the turquoise, the yellow and the black, and it left behind any of the other colours, which just so happened to work out right for the traditional colours of the Union Jack, so that we saw it in the red, the blue and the white. Okay, so I'm just going to change screens again. So if I go back to this one, so you should be able to see the PowerPoint now. So I've got a few more of these for you to have a go at. I'm just going to have a quick look. My microphone shouldn't be muted. I've just had a quick look at the chat. It might be a problem your end because mine is saying that it's working. So make sure that you've joined with audio. Okay. The other questions I'll address at the end. Okay, let me close that. Right, so let's have a look at this next one then. This is along a similar line. It's to do with the effect of colour. Now, when you're looking around and you see something, what you see is actually affected very much by the other colours that are around and any shadows that are there as well. So it says on here, it says the background colour and shadows affect how our brain interprets colours. The back of your eye, the retina, is lined with light sensitive cells. Those are those cone cells that I mentioned. And your cones affect each other in complex ways. These connections give you good colour vision, but they can also fool your eye. And this is where the perception bit comes in. So it says when cones in one part of your eye see blue light, they make nearby cones less sensitive to blue light. Because of this, you see a coloured spot on a blue background as less blue than it really is. And that's because you've got the blue background there, and therefore it makes the other cone cells around that also detect blue less affected, they're less sensitive. So if you see a blue object, it will look slightly less blue. It goes on to say, if you put a purple spot on a blue background, for instance, the spot looks a little less blue than it otherwise would. Similarly, a red spot on an orange background looks less orange than it otherwise would. So what I'm going to do is share my next screen with you, which is this one. So if I go to that, so I've got another task for you. So if I click on this, right, so hopefully, let me share it with you. There we go. So hopefully now you can see a diagram. We've got a green cylinder and it's on a checkered board. Now the bit in this diagram that's important is the grey square at the top, okay, which has got an A on it, and then what looks like a light grey square at the bottom with a B in it. But notice that the one with the B is in the shadow of this big green column. Now, if I said to you that the square with the A on and the square with the B on are the same colour, you'd probably think I was talking rubbish. And even I would think that as well. But they actually are the same colour. Okay, and it's the effect of having the shadow around that fools our brain into and our eyes into thinking that it looks slightly different. So I'm going to prove it to you. So over here, you can see I've picked up this swatch. It's just a colour match. So actually, I'm looking at this colour here, and it does look very similar to the A. So you might not be surprised that when I bring it over to square A, it blends in. Okay, so it's the same colour. But don't forget, I said to you that what you see and what you interpret of a situation is affected by other colours and other shading. So I've got the same colour. I'm going to bring it down into the shaded area over to B, and you'll notice it's the same colour. Okay, it blends in as I move it around on there. Okay, and I think that's kind of crazy. But that's the effect of shadowing. That's what it can do to our vision. It can make things appear a different colour when it's actually the same. Okay, so if I go back there, you can see it's the same, but then in the shaded area, it's the same as well. So just to prove it to you, if I click this, you can see the two squares and they are the same colour. Okay, but then it goes back and it looks like it's a different shade. And that's the effect of having the shading there. And that happens in your day-to-day vision as well, where things can look slightly different to what they actually are. Okay, let's have a look at another one. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. So hopefully you can see the PowerPoint again. Okay, so this one is really cool. I really like this one. So this is about the effect of surroundings and how that can change our perception. So it says our brain makes many decisions about what we are looking at, including taking into account the objects around it to create a field of depth. So that's the things that are in the distance of what you're looking at and the things that are in the foreground, so closer to you in terms of what you're looking at as well. And this in turn helps our brain to understand and make sense of movement that we see. Without surroundings, images or shadows our brain can struggle to make sense of what movement is happening. And this leaves room for our perception to be altered. So this is about the fact that you need to have, in order to kind of get a better idea of what you're looking at, you really need to have lots of things in your vision, because it helps your brain to understand what you're looking at. So I'm going to show you this one. I think it should be sharing. Let's just check. Yeah. Okay, so this one is of a silhouette. I don't want the sound on, so I'm going to take that off. So if I hit play, so you can see there's a silhouette here spinning. Now, depending on who you are, you might see it spinning anti-clockwise, or you might see it spinning clockwise. I personally can see it spinning anti-clockwise, but it might actually change as you're looking at it. Now, the reason why it's so difficult to tell is because there's no shading and there's nothing else around it. However, if I introduce this image here, the one with all the shadows, if you might see, well, you should hopefully be able to see that it's spinning in the anti-clockwise direction, the same as this one here. Now, this is the strange bit, is if I introduce a different image that's spinning clockwise, you should find that the silhouette changes the direction in which it's spinning, so it was different to before. Okay, now this is because, again, we've introduced a comparative image. Okay, but if it's just the silhouette on its own, it's very difficult to make out which direction it's moving, because there's no other information there for our brain to analyze, to take in. So in a second, you'll get both of the extra images in. And if you flick between the one on the left and the silhouette and the one on the right and the silhouette, you can actually get the silhouette to change direction. Okay, so have a go at that. So don't forget, switch to the other one and you'll see it change direction. And it's difficult because your brain doesn't have enough information from just that silhouette to make sense of it. Okay, I'm going to stop that. And let me go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so let's have a look at another one. Now, this one is also very good as well. And this is about the effect of your prior knowledge. So all the things that you've learned and all the past experiences that you've had, this is what this particular imitation or a perception is based on. So it says, when your brain is used to seeing a particular image, it makes assumptions that all images of that type are the same, and so forces you to perceive an image differently to how it sometimes is, even though you also know the image is not as you are seeing it to be. These assumptions that your brain makes based on prior experience happen often. And actually, this does happen a lot, and I'm going to show you quite a few of these. And essentially, it's based on your brain making assumptions about what it's used to seeing. Okay, so I'm going to share a different thing again. Okay, so let me make it big, and I'm going to turn the sound off. Okay, so this is of a mask. And you know, a mask has a bit that comes out at you, like you can see, but at the back of the mask, it's concave, which means it dips in. So now we're looking at the back of the mask, but what you should find is that it kind of flips around so that the face still points out at you. So this is the front of the mask facing the right way. Okay, but as it turns, the back of the mask should jump out at you. Okay, now the reason why this happens is because all of the time your brain is used to seeing faces that are convex, so they come out towards you. Okay, and therefore your brain assumes that every face that you see will always look that way, and it fixes the image for you. So you can fight this as much as you want. You know it's going to be in the back of the mask, but you can't get your brain to switch it because it's known forever that essentially faces always come out in that direction. Okay, and I think that one's a strange one, but I quite like that one. Okay, I'm going to pause that there. Right, let me just, right, so the next one that I've got for you is along a similar line, actually. So I'm going to share this one. Okay, so you've got a task. I want you to count the Fs inside this text in the yellow box. So you've got a few seconds, read that as quickly as you can and count all the Fs and hold that number in your head. Okay, hopefully you've done that. I would imagine that a lot of you have probably thought that there is about 3 or 4 Fs in there, but actually there are 6. Okay, so let me show you this. Now, because you are all fluid readers, your brain is used to reading and it knows kind of sentence formation. So actually your brain makes certain assumptions, and words like of, which you can see here, here, and here. And like it, the, is, those connecting words, you tend to actually read those because your brain knows where they fit in. So it puts those in automatically. And therefore you don't actually see things the way that they are actually in front of you. So if you got 3 or 4 Fs, that's pretty average. If you manage to get 5 Fs, that's really quite good. And if you manage to catch all 6 of the Fs, so there's 1 in 5, there's 1 in flies, there's 1 in of here, another 1 in of here, 1 in the scientific, and another 1 in the of down here. Okay, so there's actually 6 in there. Right, the next one is again along a similar line. I want you to read the text in the triangle. You've got a few seconds to do that. Okay, so the next one, read that again. So read it from the top all the way through. Okay, so hopefully you read it. And I know the first time I did this, I read it as I love Paris in the springtime. I didn't spot the extra the. And I'll be honest with you, even when I read the instructions on the page like I've just asked you to, it says at the bottom down here, but I got you on the line, read it again too. And when you go back and look, it says read it again. Okay, and that's because you don't always see exactly what's in front of you because your brain makes assumptions based on what you've learned before. Okay, so it changes your perception. And this happens a lot. I bet you've done it before when you've proofread your own work, and sometimes you just don't spot the mistakes. And that might be because you know what you want it to say, so you're not really reading it that carefully. Okay, let me show you another one. So this one's quite cool. So this is a famous painting of the Mona Lisa, but it's upside down. Now, you don't see faces upside down very often. So what your brain is doing right now is it's fixing the image to make sense. Okay, so that it looks like it's probably okay. Now, if I rotate it so it's right side up, actually, one of the images, the one on the right, is a bit different. Okay, so you can see the eyes aren't quite right and the mouth isn't quite right. Now, the reason why you can spot it when it's right side up is because you're used to seeing faces the correct way. So therefore, you are more likely to spot the differences. Your brain doesn't have to fix anything. But when it's upside down, your brain's not used to seeing that. So your brain kind of jumps in and makes some changes on your behalf. Okay, so that you don't necessarily spot all of those differences. Okay, let me show you another one. So this one, I'm going to give you a few moments to read this. Okay, so I want you to, it looks jumbled up, but have a go at reading it. Okay, so hopefully you have surprised yourself and realized that actually you can read it. So it says, according to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be at the right place. The rest can be a total mess and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. So actually with that one, it's the idea that you are a fluid reader, okay, and your brain is used to seeing words, it recognizes them, and therefore you don't actually even need all of the words to be in the correct, all of the letters in a word to be in the correct order. It can be a bit mixed up and it doesn't make any difference. Okay, so that's your perception changing based on your prior knowledge, okay, and your prior experience. Okay, so my next one is a little bit different, and this is about the impact of there being movement in the vision in your vision. Okay, so if there's things moving around in whatever you're looking at, it can change what you're seeing. So what I want you to do for this one is to stare at the flashing dot in the middle. Now, whilst you're staring at that, you've obviously got the red crosses moving in the background, but you've also got the 3 yellow spots in the shape of a triangle. So keep staring at the flashing dot, and I'm doing this as well. And as you're doing this, what you should notice is that some of the dots either fade or disappear, and they disappear at random points. Okay, so that's the yellow dots that are disappearing. Okay, now the reason why that happens is because you've got the crosses moving in your vision. Okay, and that can cause what we call temporary blindness. Okay, it just creates these little blind spots, but that can change what you're seeing. Okay, and this can be particularly important if you're moving like on a bike or in a car. And this is why you have to be extra thorough about looking around you. Okay, so hopefully that one you enjoyed. Okay, so the next one that I've got for you, you've probably actually come across before on social media. And this is about the fight between your left brain and right brain. So you've only got one brain, but there is a left side and a right side. The left side is more logical. So it deals with things like reading, numbers, calculations. And then the right-hand side is more creative. So it deals with things like colors. So for this one, what I want you to do is don't say the word, you need to say the colour that the word is in. So have a go, you can do it out loud wherever you are. And what you might find is that you get a little bit tongue-tied. So you can generally do it, but you might get a little bit stuck at points where you can't quite figure out exactly what it is. Okay, and that's because you've got the left-hand side of your brain that's probably the strongest because it's used the most often. So it's trying to read the words, but then you're relying on the left-hand side of your brain to interpret the color. But then it has to go back to the left-hand side to actually be able to say it out loud. Okay, so you've got the two working together, and that can cause a little bit of confusion sometimes. Okay, right. Let's have a look at the last one, I think it is. Yeah. Okay, so the last one is to show you, because we've talked a lot about the eye and perception and the brain and information going to the brain, but actually it isn't just about the eyes. It also involves your hearing as well, or your auditory part of your brain. And sometimes you can hear things differently, not only see things differently like we've seen in the other examples, but you can hear things differently as well. So let me share this with you. And this one's got some sound this time. It's known as the McGurk effect. And I'm actually going to unplug my microphone because then I think you should be able to hear the sound as well. Hopefully. I think you should still be able to hear me, but I might not be as clear as I was before. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to play it in just a moment, and you're going to see a person saying a sound. And all I want you to do is to think about what you hear that person saying. Okay, so here we go with the first one. It might be a bit laggy. Right, if I pause that there, okay, if you think about what you could hear, hopefully you heard him saying ba ba, ba ba, ba ba. So it sounds like he's going ba ba sheep, okay, so it's a B sound. Okay, right, next one. Okay, I'm going to pause it again. So this time, it probably sounded a bit different to you. And hopefully you heard da da with a D, or you might have heard da da maybe with a TH sound, but it probably sounded different to you. Okay, I've got one more. Okay, so I'll pause it one more time. So this time, you probably most likely heard him saying va va, which with a V sound. Okay, now you might be surprised to learn that actually he was making the exact same sound every time. Okay, and actually the sound was the B sound. The only thing that was changing was what you were seeing, and that was his mouth moving in a different way, and that would change what your brain was interpreting. So let me show you. I'm going to show you the next bit, which is the one sound, but actually it's going to have the three faces of the guy making the different mouth movements for the B, the V, and the D. And what I want you to do is to flick your movement between the faces, and you'll literally hear the sound change. So there isn't bar bar necessarily. It might be with the V, it might be with the D. And I think this is really mind-blowing. So here we go. So look around the screen. So you're looking at the different ones and you'll hear it change. Right, there we go. So that one I think is amazing, and that can very much change what you are hearing. Okay, so actually we rely a lot on what we're seeing, as well as what you're hearing, and sometimes what you hear is not really what's being said. Okay, so let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, and I've just skipped a few slides because I've gone straight to the animations and the videos. Okay, so it was a whistle-stop tour of a lesson to give you a taster of it. I hope it was interesting. I know online lessons can sometimes be a bit strenuous, but what I'm going to do is, I know you've not had a lot of chance to ask questions, but obviously you've had open days for that, and you've got your pre-enrolment meetings tomorrow where you can ask course-specific questions. But on the screen that you should be able to see now, I've got the addresses that you can visit to send questions to, or you can speak to your pre-enrolment person tomorrow. So I'm just having a quick look at the question and answer section, and I can see which A-level biology textbook do you recommend us to buy? Okay, so my answer to that would be that I probably wouldn't say buy a textbook, and that's because we provide an online one, which you can, obviously, you don't have to carry it around with you. In fact, actually, I can show you, if you really want to get one, then on the first page, there's this book. Okay, so this picture here where it's got AQA, A-level biology, that is the full book, but that's really quite pricey. Okay, and this is the one that we provide online, which is why I'm saying you don't need to buy a textbook. What I would recommend is that you buy a revision guide. And I would always say get that as soon as you possibly can. The revision guide that I personally find the best is the CGP one. You've probably used those at GCSE. It's the one with the guy with the cap on. It's got a green background as well, but it's specifically for our specification, which is the AQA. I think somebody asked that earlier on as well. So you want the one for AQA, and I personally would recommend the revision guide, which is by CGP, but have a look around because each one suits different people differently. Okay. So I'm not going to get through all these questions, but I'll do the best I can. So I've answered that one about the curriculum. I've said that. Do we need to make notes? Not during this lesson, but you will do in lessons. Okay, so I've dealt with that one. Is there any specific equipment needed for biology? No, not really. Just make sure that you come to lessons prepared with a pencil case, pen, paper, folder, that kind of stuff. You don't necessarily need to get a lab coat because we provide those kinds of things, so don't worry about that one. So that's done. How many topics are there in A-level biology? Right, we cover 8 topics all in all, I think it is, but it's spread over the 2 years. They're quite big, okay? But you can find out more information about that tomorrow when you have your pre-enrolment meetings. They're very varied, okay, the topics. They're brilliant. I love it, okay? It's really quite interesting. You get a chance to do things like dissections, and there's lots of practicals as well. For pre-enrolment, someone's got a pre-enrolment, Sanjay, a pre-enrolment issue. What I would do is phone the college, okay, and they will sort that out for you and get you all booked in. Someone's mentioned about CGP books. Yeah, they're brilliant. So that one's all dealt with. If we don't finish paper 2 topics at GCSE, should we learn them for A-level? That's actually a really good question. If there are topics that you haven't finished over GCSE because of the pandemic, it might be an idea. I think it's probably a good idea to at least use your GCSE revision guides to look at those over the summer. Obviously, when you come in, we are aware of that and we will plug any gaps, but it will be a benefit to you to make sure that you look at things as well. Okay. Can we ask questions in class? Yeah, absolutely. You can always ask questions in class. I definitely recommend that. We play games in class and all sorts. It's very much like how it is in school, but it's just that you get free periods, which you need to use to study in your own time as well. Okay, I think someone's mentioned about the practical endorsement. I'll do that really quickly now. The practical endorsement is required in all of the A-levels, and that's where you have to do a certain amount of practicals. So I've got about 30 seconds left. So there's set practicals with set skills that you have to have covered in order for us to give you a pass or a fail by the end of it. Okay, and we'll talk to you more about that when you start, but it's not something to worry about. Okay, I'm really sorry if I've not managed to answer your other questions, but I need to finish at this point. I look forward to seeing you all next year, and I hope you've enjoyed today. Okay, take care. Bye for now.